Hello and welcome to Queer News Tonight. This is the world's first and only LGBTQ plus daily evening television news broadcast. We are live and on demand on all smart televisions, including Roku, Apple TV, Android TV, Amazon Fire TV, YouTube, Facebook, and Twitch. It's time to queer up the news. It is Thursday, October 5th, 2023, and we are live and literally out of the closet and into the headlines. So many of your important stories we are going to tell this evening on Queer News Tonight.
This is the world's first live daily LGBTQ evening news show, literally out of the closet and into the headlines on Queer News Tonight with Al Ferguson.
I'm out South Florida senior reporter John Hayden. Al has the night off, and this evening we bring you the news of and perspective representing the LGBTQ plus community from South Florida, America, and across our planet.
This is the world's first and only unedited live LGBTQ plus evening news show. Whatever happens unique in the LGBTQ news, you see it and hear it.
Hotspots Magazine Happening Out Television Network is a nonprofit 501c3 media company in the same model of PBS and NPR, but designed for the LGBTQ plus community. Our mission? To support the 10 pillars of our LGBTQ plus community. We want to inform and educate the key issues of our Black community, Latino, lesbians and queer women, trans, students, youth, seniors, HIV/AIDS healthcare, business, social justice, and faith. Help us support our community.
We are part of one of the largest LGBTQ plus media companies in America, Hotspots Magazine and Happening Out Television Network. Our magazine is celebrating 38 years of the LGBTQ plus experience, and our television, news, talk, and entertainment shows support our mission to educate the LGBTQ plus and broader community.
Well, it is Thursday night. We're ready to get the weekend started, so let's meet tonight's panel. And we begin with Dr. Bobby Huen. Bobby is a certified civil and family mediator and founder of BH Conflict Resolution Services. Originally from Hong Kong and having grown up around the world, he offers a global perspective on current events. Welcome, Bobby.
Thank you, John. Lovely to be here. And, well,
lovely to have you.
Thank you.
That's what it says in my prompt. No, I love it. Next, Gregg Shapiro, an inductee into the Chicago LGBT Hall of Fame. He is the author of 9 books. His entertainment coverage, including celebrity interviews, runs in a variety of print and online publications, including Out South Florida. Welcome, Gregg.
Hi, Johnny. Hi, Jeff. Hi, Bobby. I just want to be sure to remind people that next Wednesday is the monthly Wednesday night poetry and prose club, and once again, Julie Marie Wade, who I mentioned last time I was on, she's going to be our headliner on Wednesday night. It's at Aperitivo at Bona, beginning at 7 p.m. She's a star and she's amazing, so please come out and hear her.
And it's an intimate space, not small, but it's intimate. So if you get there early, order a drink and chill, because
and you can even order dinner too. They'll serve you dinner in that room too.
Well, only if you're nice to Gregg, or to
Glenn.
to Gregg, to Glenn, yeah. I'll start with G. You have an extra G. That is always, your family was rich. Finally, let's welcome anchor Jeff Oliverio. He is a founder and treasurer of the Hollywood LGBTQ Plus Council. Jeff is Our Fund's Next Generation Philanthropist Award recipient. He is also the co-chair for next weekend's 2023 National LGBTQ Plus Task Force Gala. Welcome, Jeff.
Happy to be here. Shockingly, I'm here because otherwise I would be doing a lot of work for the task force right now.
Yeah.
But the Task Force Gala is next Saturday, October 14th. We're celebrating.
We see the graphic for it right there next to it.
Yes, we are forever strong, unapologetically queer. We're ready to share some queer joy that night. It's a celebration, first and foremost. We're honoring some famous, some really amazing people. We have Dominique Jackson from from Pose, and we have Constance Collins, who is the founder of Lotus House, who is the largest women's shelter in America, as our honorees. So we're very excited. I think it's going to be a really great night for our community. So tickets are still available. We have a really amazing after party event called the Afterglow Ball. So it's an inclusive dance event. We have Hector Fonseca, we have Athena Dion hosting, we have a very big lineup of entertainers. It's going to be a really fun night. So if you want something to do for 7 hours of a Saturday night, you have a whole array of things.
A very small window.
A very small window. but on a serious note, it's a great fundraiser. It gives a lot of money back to the local community and helps fund the work of the task force.
Now, I have a story, and a couple of my colleagues have done stories for Out South Florida, looking ahead to next weekend's event. But one of the things we talked about, because this is the second year in a row that you've chaired it, is even you, a long-time seasoned political activist, have sort of been stunned by the shifting landscape of the last 2 years. And you've really had a front row seat to it by being able to be this involved with Task Force.
Yeah.
What is the biggest challenge, and what are we hoping to get out of the gala next weekend?
I think the biggest challenge is, from a sponsor perspective, and from our community outside of South Florida, is why is the task force having an event in Florida? Was a question we got.
Really?
The task force got. This event has been in Florida this is the 27th year. So the task force didn't bring the event here. It has been here all along. But sponsors and people in our own community are saying, why are you doing this celebration in Florida, where Florida is the epicenter? And the task force, and part of our theme is that we're digging our heels in, and we're saying we're here and we're fighting back against it. We're not going to retreat because of the current administration and what's happening. We're going to be here and fight back. And obviously help our community celebrate. And that was really important.
Yeah, and you know what? The task force and so many of our grassroots organizations, they do a lot of the grunt work all year round. Knocking on doors, phone banking, everything that you can imagine they're doing. So you know what? A night to celebrate queer joy is a welcome respite. And like you said, helps focus us for the next 13 months, which are just going to be crucial to our community.
Yes.
And that said, we are the reporters for Queer News Tonight. And this evening, we begin with the queer headlines. And the LGBTQ plus community in South Florida and across America is diverse. Our community around the world is vast. And here are the bullet points for the queer news for today, Thursday, October 5th. And we begin by queering up politics. UK's Prime Minister says misgendering trans people is common sense at Conservative conference.
We are going to change this country, and that means life means life. Now, that shouldn't be a controversial position. The vast majority of hard-working people agree with it. And it also shouldn't be controversial for parents to know what their children are being taught in school about relationships. Patients should know when hospitals are talking about men or women. And we shouldn't get bullied. And we shouldn't get bullied into believing that people can be any sex they want to be. They can't. A man is a man and a woman is a woman. That's just common sense.
He's talking about bullying. UK Prime Minister Rishi Sunak shared his anti-trans views while speaking at the Conservative Party conference. He told the predominantly right-wing crowd that the British public is being bullied into believing that people can be any sex they want to be, saying, quote, "A man is a man and a woman is a woman. That's just common sense," end quote. And you heard the round of applause he got, and that was from a very Tory-filled MP Conservative member audience. His comments have been widely reviled by the public, many of whom said they couldn't believe him making such claims. Britain's Home Office says 2021 saw at least 2,600 reported hate crimes against transgender people in the UK. Even worse, 83% of trans people say they don't report hate crimes out of fear. Sunak's speech also touched on plans to ban trans women from female hospital wards, saying patients should know when hospitals are talking about men or women. This is not the first time Sunak has attacked the trans and non-binary community, using the subject as a joke for the entertainment of Conservative Party members. In June, Sunak was secretly filmed mocking trans people in a clip, joking about women having penises. Well, this man is just disgusting to begin with. And the fact that this conference was in Manchester, UK, which is has one of the biggest prides, if not the biggest pride in Europe. So he was he was treading on unfriendly ground when he said this. And I'm shocked by 83% of trans, I shouldn't be, but 83% won't report a hate crime because they're afraid of more hate crime. That is terrible. That said, this government, this is a party that taught our Republicans how to eat their own. They are on their, I think, third prime minister since the last election. It's all because conservatives keep firing their own conservative leaders. You know, this is a member of a party that okayed marriage equality ahead of the time, but it's also a party that voted for Brexit. They have no real vision. They have no conservative compass. They have no real moral compass whatsoever.
Right now, the problem here is that attacking trans people is now basically routine for the right wing. I mean, he's basically stealing, the playbook from Moms for Liberty, Stupid Freedom, whatever. Attacking trans people, go the J.K. Rowling route, and, hopefully will attract people who are too ignorant to understand trans issues and basically turn us into political villains once again. The Boris Johnson, Liz Truss, him, they're on political thin ice. The next administration is less likely to be Tory. Less likely. I didn't say impossible, but
there's no chance of a Labour government not at least making serious inroads into the majority of the next election.
But the thing is, that it might be a mixed government with Liberal Democrats, or Labour plus Lib Dems, etc., etc. But the problem here is that every time conservative politicians find themselves backs against a wall, they go find scapegoat, and somehow we are the scapegoat every single time. It's women, LGBTQ people, black people. I mean, the irony of this Tory government. He's Indian, and his home office is explicitly anti-migrant. Like it is. It's like that Vivek guy.
Yeah, I mean, there's so much ignorance, and again, the issues in Britain they abound. I mean, the economy is in ruin. They have a very unhappy electorate. The job situation there, people, again, inflation also out of control. People couldn't heat their homes last year. But what should we focus on? A man is a man, as a woman is a woman, because that's what's going to solve the problems. Because they can't solve problems, so they have to create them and create divisions.
And it's called look over there.
Right. Yeah, it's a playbook that's it's going to get tired. I think it's going to get tired because people, especially if we go into any kind of economic recession, people are going to say, what are you doing that's going to help me feed my kids and pay my bills? And that's really, those are kitchen table issues. These issues are going to, if we go into a period where things get worse, I'm not predicting that, but those are the issues that people are going to start voting on.
Yeah, and attacking trans people isn't one of those.
Yeah.
It is in a way reassuring to know that we're not the only country with hateful enema nozzles as leaders. And don't forget, they also gave us beautiful Margaret Thatcher, such a pretty girl.
Oh, God.
I mean, just this is what they're serving up as their leaders.
I'm still bitter about Margaret Thatcher giving away Hong Kong in 1984.
Yeah.
So, but the problem with, and this is also recognizing the pattern that rich white conservatives, well, in this case, not so white, but rich conservatives using populism to drive the underclass to the polls to vote for them.
Yeah.
This you see it in America, now you see it in Britain too.
Yeah, and it's important to point out, this was at a Conservative Party conference. This isn't necessarily a piece of legislation that's going forward. This is basically just to rile up the base. But here's the thing about the base in the United Kingdom, is that they have, they're not called districts, but in the American parlance, it would be a district. And they've got like 670 seats in Parliament. And they have a lot of swing districts. And, the Conservatives could win and I think they did win like a 50-seat majority in the last election, so they're fighting amongst themselves, but it could swing. It could tidal wave go and have a 60-seat Liberal majority out of the next election, which is why we're not seeing the Prime Minister call for an election until he absolutely positively has to, because this kind of intolerant rhetoric doesn't resonate beyond the base. And they can't rely on the base as like they do in America. They don't have, God bless them, they don't have an Alabama or Mississippi.
Or gerrymandering.
Or gerrymandering at the level that we do. So we're watching.
Next, let's queer up gay culture. Martina Navratilova attacks LGBT History Month post that features a drag queen makes transphobic statements.
Patty, I am so excited to be here with you at Stonewall National Monument with these beautiful flags behind us. Tell me in your own words why places like this, like Stonewall, are so important to telling America's story.
It's a great question. I think it's because queer rights are more under attack than ever. And I think if we don't acknowledge the past, we're bound to repeat it. So, at a place like Stonewall, this beautiful place, it's a place where so much discrimination and hatred occurred against the queer community, but it's also a place where resistance and queer joy and queer liberation happened. And I think that that is worth celebrating and commemorating. And so I think that we need to not ignore hate as it exists today. I think we need to acknowledge it because it's not just our past, it's our present. And we need to work together to build a more equitable and just future. And that's on that.
Former tennis star Martina Navratilova caused a racket over a seemingly simple tribute to LGBTQ+ History Month this week. The legendary athlete and out lesbian slammed Interior Secretary Deb Haaland for including a drag queen in a video celebrating LGBTQ+ Americans' place in the nation's history, calling the performer a pathetic parody of women. In the video, Haaland and drag queen Patagonia talk outside New York's Stonewall National Monument, the site of the 1969 clash between gay men, drag queens, and police, which marked the start of the modern fight for LGBTQ+ rights. Navratilova seemed incensed by Gonia's appearance, despite drag's undeniable role in the LGBTQ+ movement. The tennis veteran responded to the video saying, quote, "The pathetic parody of women continues," end quote. One reply to the comment tries to remind Navratilova that the drag queen is, in fact, a parody and not a transgender woman, and the athlete was swerving into intentionally transphobic territory. While Navratilova was hailed as an LGBTQ+ trailblazer after coming out in 1981, she has been a vocal opponent of transgender women competing in women's sports. In August, she called the U.S. Tennis Association's policy on including trans women unjust in a post on social media. Hey, Martina, how many tennis pros were at the Stonewall on that night in June 1969? I'm going to guess probably none. And Martina, please stick to what you do best, and that's making bad artwork.
And also, she actually used X, formerly known as Twitter, to tell Harry Potter to shut up. Daniel Radcliffe. He tweeted, I'm going to keep using the word tweet because I'm not using that stupid thing. Saying that, transgender women are women, and apparently she tell him to shut up. And I'm like, no, a cisgender straight man is doing better than you.
Yeah.
You want to reconsider your positions.
Yeah, absolutely.
I find it interesting, she's being featured now as a recurring character on The Real Housewives of Miami with her wife. They're featured this season at New York Pride, all of the Miami housewives. And again, your spouse does not speak for you, but again, the LGBTQ community are the fans of that show.
Oh, yeah.
And I wonder if it's going to end up getting her wife canceled off of the show. Andy Cohen, I think you need to ask her those questions when they're being interviewed. The trailer is out right now, so you can see them in all their LGBTQ revelry with drag queens on The Real Housewives of Miami. So, yeah. And I believe that that's paying some bills in the Navratilova household right now, and not her artwork, as you said.
No, not her artwork.
Well, controversy and pettiness pays a lot of bills at Andy Cohen's house and the Bravo staff.
It does, but people have gotten canceled off of Bravo for a lot less than what she's done. A lot less. And so that's why it'll be interesting to see how this plays out. And I hope that they ask that question of her wife, because it's a question that should be asked.
Yeah, and you know, Martina Navratilova, you're down here in Miami allegedly, and probably, hopefully, watching this. And I'm just going to tell you, you are a bad parody of a human being. The fact that you were a trailblazer and a hero in 1981, great. Thank you for coming out. Thank you for being what you were. But the fact is, you're not that anymore. You're not an ally. The T of LGBTQ may not have even been thought of back in 1981. And that's not okay, but it was the times. But we're not 1981 anymore. The LGBTQ plus community is one community. And we have to be there to support each other. No one can make you, but we can make sure that you are not speaking for us. Because going forward, we all need to be together. And if you're not with us, according to your social feeds, you are literally against us.
Match that.
Now, next, let's queer up the USA view. Texas town blocks funding for young women's resource due to liberal politics. I should get like a lightning sound here, no, like thunder. Anyways, Texas officials rejected state funds to Girls Inc. of Tarrant County after dozens of people raised concerns about the organization's support of LGBTQ plus issues and abortion rights. Girls Inc. of Tarrant County offers school-based and community programming for 5 to 18-year-old girls. It's one of 5 organizations that applied for and were approved to receive grant funding from the Texas Department of Family and Protective Services. Tarrant County, which is home to Fort Worth, administers the requests and picks recipients. $115,000 was earmarked for Girls Inc. of Tarrant County's Girl Power program, a 2-part program focusing on self-esteem, stress management, healthy relationship, and hygiene. The vote to deny was 3-2 along party lines, with Republicans voting against. Residents who oppose pointed to the organization's acceptance of transgender girls into their programs as programming on sexual health and the nation's arm supporting abortion rights. Girls Inc. of Tarrant County is part of a larger network of chapters across the U.S. and Canada. Well, I mean, that's not surprising, is it? I mean, elections matter. Local elections matter. We have been wormed in, conservatives has wormed their way into local issues and dictating grassroots businesses now. I mean, this is not new. Pat Robertson tried to bust in people just to ban teaching of evolution, but we liberals keep taking our eye off the ball when it comes to national issues, when it comes to like granular local issues. Okay. We always know in national issues, big elections, Congress people, Senate, governor, but somehow when it comes to school boards and such, we drop the balls half the time. That's how, moms for liberty, freedom, yada, 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 becomes the dominant force. They go and knock on the doors, but we need to do the same. We need to tell our allies, our straight allies, that this is not okay. We cannot take our eye off the ball from these issues or else this is what happens.
Yes.
This is what happens. I mean, it's a national organization. It's like a network of YWCA, YMCA, and don't make me do the dance. But
that's for after 1 minute.
Yeah. But it's a network of nonprofits basically just set up to have altruistic purposes. These people would actually throw money away just so that, to cut the nose to spite the face.
Yeah, absolutely. They do. Absolutely.
Wasn't Texas talking about seceding at some point?
Yeah,
So what are they waiting for? Now's as good a time as any. Bye-bye.
Well, I have to agree with Bobby that these, cutting funding to something that, again, the LGBTQ factor of this organization is a sliver of what they do.
Yeah.
Okay, so people in Texas, who have daughters, who probably could really benefit from programs that this organization puts on, are now going to be limited because bigots have voted against anything that mentions anything that you don't agree with, and that is not called America. That is tyranny. If you you could not support the LGBT community and not agree with it, but you cannot completely erase it, and that's what they're trying to do.
And one of the things that strikes me is that it supports girls. First off, Republicans are running against equality.
Yeah,
they are literally running against DEI, diversity, equity, equality, and inclusion. Mm-hmm. Those are things that they are openly saying, no, thank you, not on our watch. And the fact is, one of the things they're saying is that the girls' organization, and God bless them, they're great, but that they serve girls regardless of sexual orientation, religion, or other unmutable characteristics. Okay, being trans or being LGBTQ, that's not a choice. That is an immutable character. Religion is
a choice.
Yeah.
You're not
always.
You're born into a religious family, perhaps, but you're not born Catholic. You're not born Jewish. You're not born, First Baptist. That's who should be under the microscope, not people who are just trying to be themselves. And 5 to 18-year-old girls, those are, whether you're gay, straight, trans, whatever, that's a horrible, terrible time. It's a horrible time. And you're just saying, we're going to not only not make it better, we're going to actively try to make it worse. You are a deplorable, deplorable group of people for voting against something this positive and affirming.
Well, let's queer up the courts. Arsonist who set fire to a Seattle gay bar sentenced to only 4 years in jail. Calvin Garcia terrorized the patrons of Seattle, Washington's queer bar on February 24th, 2020, when he set it on fire. Now his crime is getting a slap on the wrist. The 26-year-old pleaded guilty to a hate crime after an FBI agent said Garcia admitted his bias led him to set the fire. Despite the vicious actions and motives, he is only sentenced to 4 years in prison. He faced up to 10 years. Many feel a mere 48 months of prison, followed by 3 years of unsupervised release for such a violent crime, isn't enough to teach anyone a lesson. Speaking at sentencing, Assistant Attorney General Kristen Clark said Garcia committed an act of violence targeting innocent victims inside the LGBTQ+ bar, a known safe space for the LGBTQ+ community. Clark expects that the sentence sends the message that every person in the country deserves equal protection, regardless of who they love or how they identify. Well, how refreshing that sounded, that end of that story, the beginning of the story, terrifying.
Yeah.
We, of course, have covered. We were near, and the location where we do queer news was attacked just recently, not to this extreme, but these attacks are happening all across the country. Why? Because of anti-LGBTQ rhetoric that's being blazoned across the media and the airwaves by politicians that are fighting against equality, and they're causing these people who are extremists to come out and take action because they're saying the gay people are coming for you, the trans people are coming for you, so you better stop them. And this is what they're doing to stop them. They're doing acts of violence, and it's scary, and there's going to be a tipping point. I hope that it's going to subside. But we're going, especially going into this election year, I think it's only going to get much worse.
Yeah.
Well, I only hope that Calvin finds the love of a good, strong man while he's behind bars, and that his prolapsed anus heals quickly.
Well, while I think we should not make light of sexual assault in prison, 4 years, I'm in the mind that hopefully during this 4 years he will reform. Thank God that he's going to the federal penitentiary where actually they are. There's not, hopefully the federal system would actually have rehabilitation efforts instead. I mean, we live in a country where the penal system is designed to punish instead of rehabilitate.
Rehabilitate.
Yeah, anything.
Yes. It must become more extreme.
Yeah, exactly. So hopefully he, didn't fall into the rabbit hole of hatred over hatred over hatred. I mean, just people in, yeah.
Yeah, and I suspect that I hope I'm wrong, but I suspect we'll probably hear this name again. I really do. The fact that it was given 4 years, I don't know his record. I mean, and the last sentence talks about the Attorney General looking for equality in sentencing. I mean, he probably, if it was his first violent crime, even if it was a hate crime, this probably falls in line with the sentencing guidelines. You would hope that because it was a hate crime, it would have been more. But I mean, he was probably actually treated average, fair. That doesn't make it any better, and he's still a bad person. And the people who drive him, the people who motivate him, because it's one thing to be able to embrace not embrace, but to wrap our heads around the Proud Boys and to wrap our heads around these hate groups, the Klan. We've seen them, we can verbally talk to them, but it's these lone wolves that are out there, that the Proud Boys, they're driving the conversation. They're the ones talking to the people sitting alone on the dark web in their dark rooms late at night going, yes, my life sucks because of the LGBTQ plus community. That's where they get these ideas. And that's when they say, okay, you know what? They're telling me to do this. I'm going to go out and I'm going to set a fire. Sunshine was egged, like you said. But it was also the person set a fire outside. It didn't catch, it didn't grow into something big, and we were very lucky this time. But the fact is, a fire is a fire. Arson is arson, hate is hate. And we're at the intersection of those violent acts now.
I mean, as someone who used to research extremist groups, that's what they want. They want lone wolves. The Gavin McGinnises, the Anita Bryants, they are not going out there to set queer churches on fire, but they want to inspire someone to. In the lips of TikTok, it's not setting the church on fire, but she will tell you where the drag show is, and nudge, wink, wink, here's the gas.
Yeah.
Now we're going to queer up the courts. Case of Christian Baker who refused LGBTQ plus cake to be heard by Colorado High Court. The justices will hear the case of a Christian baker who refuses to make a cake celebrating a gender transition. This is the latest development in the years-long legal saga involving Jack Phillips and LGBTQ+ rights, and comes on the heels of a U.S. Supreme Court victory for a graphic artist who didn't want to design wedding websites for same-sex couples. Phillips won a partial victory before the Supreme Court in 2018 after refusing to make a gay couple's wedding cake. He was later sued by Autumn Scardina, a transgender woman, after Phillips and his suburban Denver bakery refused to make a pink cake with blue frosting for her birthday and to celebrate her gender transition. Scardina said she brought the lawsuit to challenge the veracity of Phillips' statements that he would serve LGBTQ+ customers. The case involves the state's anti-discrimination law, making it illegal to refuse to provide services to people based on protected characteristics like race, religion, or sexual orientation. The key issue in the case is whether the cakes Phillips creates are a form of speech and whether forcing him to make a cake with a message he does not support is a violation of his First Amendment right to free speech. Oy, this putz again. He seems to have risen more times than his savior. Bake the effing cake. No one's asking you to eat it too.
Yeah, and the thing is, though, this is a deliberate challenge from a trans woman who wants him to make the cake. The cake itself doesn't actually say anything related to LGBTQ+, except for the colors. So So the challenge to Phillips is that how does he justify refusing to bake a pink cake with blue frosting and say that, and claim that, that's forced expression, while, if an 8-year-old girl comes into your bakery and asks for a pink cake with blue frosting, are you going to say no to? Or are you only saying no because the customer is trans?
Well, I like to see little girls cry, so I'd probably say no, just despite it.
But you know what I mean. The problem is that the wedding invitation case or wedding website case, which by the way is completely made up by by those
that needs to be
MFers or whatever their names are, and they are, but you can argue that okay, so the website contains words and stuff, and you don't want to say that, but baking a cake is baking a cake.
Yes.
Unless I ask you to write the slogan or a happy trans anniversary on the cake, I'm not asking you to celebrate anything other than just baking a cake with specific colors on it.
Yeah,
so
absolutely.
I think if people look back on the fall of our society, it'll be about cake baking. If I have to talk about this one more time, I mean, first of all, the conversation is just it's down a hole of like there are so many more important things that we could be talking about in the world, but the sentiment of it and the fact that the courts are hearing. I mean, we're talking about important issues, and the courts have to take up their time to talk about who can bake a cake and who can't bake a cake, and again, I understand a lot of these cases are brought, as we know with the website, they're brought for the factor of making the statement. But we need to do something to rectify this because these are again, they're distractions from and we're not solving any real problem.
Waste of time.
I got a question for you. Is there any level of advocacy that can move this issue at this point, or is everybody just here? Because we can have galas and door knocking and grassroots efforts and on all sorts of political elections, but aren't we sort of kind of at where we're at on this at this point?
I don't think so because again, just when we were talking about, when we talk about youth and you talk about the people that are pushing most of these things, Moms for Liberty, and again, not the age group may not be as important, but when Moms for Liberty realizes, oh, guess what, my son is gay, or oh, guess what, my daughter is coming out as wants to transition, and every time another person is able to, the reason we have to have visibility and we have to keep telling our stories over and over is because we need to make sure that when there are people out there that feel like there's no one listening, that there is a place for them, and that those stories, and also there are people out there that are like, oh, I don't know any trans people, so these stories don't affect me, which is a very legitimate thing. If it doesn't affect you, you don't vote on it, right? Or you don't care about it. But eventually you're going to either somebody in your family or somebody you work with or your best friend's kids, somebody is going to come into your life. So we have to keep telling those stories because we have to show that it may not impact you individually, but it will impact somebody you know.
Yeah, and I think that she's going to lose this case. The Supreme Court has not been amenable to Colorado's equal rights protections that the state passed, but the Supreme Court just keeps knocking it down and knocking it down. And usually I would agree with you about how there are other things that are so much more important that we have to talk about. But this type of free speech is very important at this juncture because there is a judge in Texas that is trying, his name's Kesmerick, and he is trying to basically say that any speech related to sex, intimacy, or sexuality has zero to scant protection under the First Amendment. So the fact is, there is a judge, there's an activist judge who's trying to go after this. So while it does seem silly, he's finding these little seemingly inconsequential cases.
And let me rephrase what I meant, was not that us talking about it is not silly, is the fact that these things are going to court and taking up time, space in our government and our court system, and there can't just be like a line drawn saying this is what free speech means, and continuously, and we're going down to cakes now, like you said, websites has words on it. Now we're talking about like pink and blue frost. I mean, there has to be a line where the courts are like, we're throwing this out as garbage because, and meaning, and we have to have a line drawn to stop this ridiculousnse.
I mean, and let's face it, the baker would have baked the cake if the person would have said, this is for my birthday.
Yes.
And it's about words again.
And then, but it was a different birthday. It was the birthday of her transition, of realizing her real self. And that type of self-awareness and honesty has no place in conservative, bigoted circles.
No.
Well, each of the 31 cities and towns that make up the greater Fort Lauderdale area are unique, offering their own brand of diversity, vibrant culture, and sense of community. From the breathtaking coastline of the Atlantic Ocean to the expansive Florida Everglades, or the LGBTQ+ shops and entertainment in Wilton Manors. These cities, each in their own way, make Broward County the best place to live for work and play for everyone under the sun.
Next, we are proud of our special partnership with Sunshine Cathedral, the world's largest queer church here in Fort Lauderdale. Supporting that partnership, we are broadcasting from our permanent set here at Sunshine Cathedral at the Happening Out television studios. We broadcast Sunshine Cathedral's Sunday International Service at 10:30 a.m.
Well, we finished tonight's Queer News headlines with a segment that we, for some reason, call LGBTQ+ 1 Minute News.
LGBTQ+ 1 Minute News. Let's queer up trans rights. New NBC News podcast explores the growing anti-trans movement in one Texas town. One day, while doing house chores and putting his kids to bed, reporter Mike Heisenbach has listened to a Grapevine Colleyville school board meeting while a mother claimed that a queer teacher made her son trans. He contacted Antonia Hilton about starting a new project. Heisenbach and Hilton's investigation is now the subject of a new NBC News Studios podcast, Grapevine, that's premiered yesterday. The 6-episode series investigates the anti-trans movement in Texas and how the approach in Grapevine has been more or less copied and pasted elsewhere. The podcast features exclusive interviews with students, teachers, school board candidates, parents, and politicians, as well as secretly recorded audio of school administrators grappling with growing political pressure from conservative groups.
LGBTQ+ 1 Minute News. Let's queer up education. Wisconsin school policy allowing students to choose pronouns blocked by judge. Waukesha County Circuit Judge Michael Maxwell has blocked a school district's policy of allowing students to change their names and gender pronouns without parental consent. He ruled the Kettle Moraine School District's policy violates the right of parents to make medical decisions for their children. The decision stems from a lawsuit parents filed in 2021 alleging that the district officials improperly used a male name and male pronouns to address their 12-year-old daughter without their consent and over their objections. The girl was questioning her identity at the time, but eventually decided that she didn't want to transition. 2 conservative activist law firms, the Wisconsin Institute for Law and Liberty and the Alliance Defending Freedom, filed the suit on the parents' behalf.
LGBTQ+ 1 Minute News. Let's queer up trans rights. Elliot Page files amicus brief in Indiana gender-affirming care lawsuit. An appeal involving Indiana's law banning gender transition procedures for minors continues attracting attention. The case, KC et al., the individual members of the Medical Licensing Board of Indiana, focuses on a law prohibiting Indiana doctors performing gender transition procedures on minors and from aiding or abetting another doctor to do so. Trans actor Elliot Page has filed a brief with the court opposing the law as unconstitutional. Page has been a vocal and high-profile LGBTQ+ activist his whole life, including before he transitioned.
LGBTQ+ 1 Minute News. Let's queer up drag culture. La Brea Tar Pits host first Queer Family Day with Drag Story Hour. The event at the iconic site is Friday the 13th from 3 to 8 p.m. The event will be a frightfully fun day filled with festivities, fun, educating, and welcoming events for the whole family. Queer Family Day gives people a chance to enjoy drag story time hosted by Pickle, the current drag laureate for the city of West Hollywood. Attendees can strut their Halloween best in a costume contest alongside a saber-toothed cat, test their knowledge of queer history in a round of trivia, and meet real scientists. Representatives from nonprofit organizations such as Extraordinary Families, Gender Justice LA, Trans Lounge, and more will be on site to share the important resources available to the LGBTQ+ community. The La Brea Tar Pits are an active paleontological research site in urban Los Angeles.
LGBTQ+ 1 Minute News. Let's queer up entertainment. Queer actors and Rocky Horror Picture Showcast protest church that bought St. Louis Theater. Tivoli Theater in the Loop was one of a dwindling number of safe spaces to be openly queer, but its new owners have no interest in continuing the tradition. One family church has bought the property and doesn't intend to show movies with LGBTQ+ characters or themes. To protest the loss of their space to a bigoted organization, people plan to dress up as flamboyantly as possible and put their pride on full display in the protest in front of the theater tomorrow, October 6th at 6 p.m. It was once a haven for rockers' interactive screenings of Rocky Horror Picture Show and other queer theatrical offerings.
That is today's news for the LGBTQ+ community on the world's first and only daily LGBTQ+ evening news show.
If our community is important to you, share this news with your friends and family. Are you, like most of America, part of our very large television audience watching this live LGBTQ+ news broadcast right now on Roku, Apple TV, Android TV, and Amazon Fire TV?
Queer News Tonight is the only live LGBTQ+ digital television show in the world that is out of the closet and into the headlines. We need your support. If our community is to grow, we must tell our stories and bring them to the attention of the broader world.
This is the only place in the world that tells these types of LGBTQ+ stories in motion and sound. That is the passion of Hotspots Magazine, Happening Out Television Network, and Queer News Tonight.
I'm John Hayden. And on behalf of these LGBTQ+ reporters, the anchors of Queer News Tonight, including Dr. Bobby Huen, Jeff Oliverio, and Gregg Boom Boom Shapiro. We will see you daily at 8 p.m. And to our LGBTQ+ world, we wish you a very good night.
Good night.
We are Queer News Tonight, the world's first and only live daily LGBTQ+ evening news show, brought to you from Happening Out Television Network. We operate in the same model of PBS and NPR, but for the LGBTQ plus community. We educate, inform, and entertain by supporting the 10 pillars of our LGBTQ plus community, with more than 100,000 a week watching us on Roku, Apple Television, and other channels. To keep the story going, we accept donations with 100% transparency. Stay updated and live authentically with Queer News Tonight.